Willys MB two-piece skid plate installation. In this video, we will be installing a two-piece skid plate on the Willys MB. Let's take a close look at the hardware here. We've got all the hardware lined up that you'll need for the install. You got carriage bolts, you've got flat washers, you've got lock washers, and you've got the corresponding nuts, as well as one bolt and a large flat washer. The carriage bolts are size 3/8 by 16 by 7/8. On the passenger side here of the transmission crossmember, I'll show you the holes where the skid plate attaches to. And here on the driver's side, you can see each hole is located on opposite sides of the crossmember near the stay cable. Let's take a look at the smaller of the two pieces of the skid plate. You've got your areas right here, the squares are where your carriage bolts will go, and this folded up area on the end that attaches to the outside of the frame. The larger piece of the skid plate is facing forward. A good reference point here is the two holes that hold the muffler clamp down, and those are facing towards the front of the vehicle. The two rolled up ends on each side are facing up. Keeping the skid plate oriented in the correct direction, I will insert one of the carriage bolts, in this case the one closest to the steering box, and slide the plate under the frame and onto the transmission crossmember. Line the carriage bolt into its proper location, as I stated earlier, the one that's facing closest to the steering box in this case, and then I'll have a flat washer I'll have to install, and then a lock washer, and then a nut. It gets a little difficult at this point right here to hold all this assembly together with your hand, but once you get this one bolt on, it'll be a lot easier for the consecutive ones. Install the nut, but you only need to run it down a few threads just to hold the bolt into place while you line up the other ones. You'll want some movement in the skid plate as you assemble the second piece and attach it to the frame. We'll make sure the skid plate is lined up with the secondary hole and install the second carriage bolt, flat washer, lock washer, and nut. Again, we're just tightening these down finger tight. Let's move over now to the passenger side of the Jeep, and we'll line the holes up on the skid plate to their appropriate locations and insert the carriage bolt through the front side. This is a little bit more difficult to get at because you're working now inside the transmission and transfer case area as well as the drive shaft. This is the fun one, so to say, and the dexterity in your fingers is going to get tested here, but you have to install the flat washer, the lock washer, and then the nut. With a little patience, and you'll probably drop the fasteners 2 or 3 times like I did, you'll be able to get them in, and again, just run the nut down finger tight for the time being. This fourth bolt is not as difficult as the last one we did, and you still got to have to be nimble here as you get your fingers inside and install the fasteners. The secondary part of the plate is installed using the same size carriage bolts as we attached the main plate to the crossover member with. I'll install one of the carriage bolts with the bolt actually facing inward towards the curvature of the plate. The curvature of the smaller plate matches up with that of the larger as shown here, and I'm just going to insert the bolt through the bottom. The plate goes on the outside or towards the ground when you're fastening it to the larger plate. Go ahead and install a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut, and then we'll move to the second hole more towards the drive shaft. Install the last carriage bolt as shown. The location for the last bolt is on the outside of the frame, and a nut has been welded to the inside. Lift up the plate and line the hole up with the hole on the frame, and install the 3/8 by 24 by inch bolt and the 3/8 by 1.5 inch outside diameter washer into the location. With all the fasteners in place now, I'll go back and tighten the 2 bolts that hold the 2 plates together first and make sure they're secure, and then go back and tighten all the rest of them. All you'll need is a wrench here because the carriage bolts won't slide out because they're fixed to the slots in the plates. After tightening up all the bolts, we'll get underneath the Jeep and just make sure everything lines up and it all lines up nicely and it looks good. And last but not least, to make the fasteners look a little bit more period correct, I'll take a Dremel tool and sand off the markings on them and then prime and paint with 33070 Ron Fitzpatrick Jeep Parts paint. Thank you for watching. We are restoring a 1943 Willys MB. Please subscribe to Team G503 on YouTube.